We have been looking at the halachas of Shmitas Kesafim, philosophy behind it, mitzvah from the Torah, and I said that the Sefer Achinach also gives brief halachas in each mitzvah, so I want to look at those as a background for deciding which halachas of Shmitas Kesafim annul release of debts from the Shmita year that we will look at more in depth. Sefer HaChinuch says that midinei mitzvah, what are the basic halachas of this mitzvah? Mashamar zechron l'bracha, as they say, as our rabbi said in the Sifrei, the halachic work on B'midbar Dvarim, Numbers and Deuteronomy. Shein shvius mishmetet ela b'sofa, that Shmita only releases from debts at the end. This is the opinion of most authorities. We will look at this a little bit more in depth later. Mishatishka chama be'erev Rosh Hashanah shel motzi shvis, as the sun sets between the last day of Elul and the first day of Rosh Hashanah of the following Shmita cycle. Naamar, as it says, miketz sheva shanim, at the end of 7 years, meaning at the very end of the 7th year. Mishmetet es afilu malve shebishtar, and it releases even a debt that's secured by a document. Sheyesh bo chrais nechasim, that there is tied, it's a secured document tied to real estate. Vim siyam lo sidei b'halvaso enim mishamet, but if it says a specific field, the way the Talmudic mortgage works is different than the way present-day mortgage works. A shtar, a document of debt, mortgages all of a person's property. However, a more limited mortgage states this specific property is responsible for paying off this debt. In the case of specific property, it's similar to the person taking collateral for the loan, which we're about to see is not released. And because of that, a secured loan, what we would call it in English, is not released. Valmalve elamashkan eno mishamet. And if you take a piece of collateral, we would call this something like what a pawn shop does today. The debt is not released. V'hushiyai chov keneged hamashkan, and that is for that the debt is less than or equal to the value of the collateral. So if I take, someone wants to borrow $100 and they give me a beautifully made wooden box that's worth $100 or more, they still owe me the $100, and when they pay me, I have to return the box. However, if they gave me $1,000 for this wooden box that's worth $150, then they would have to pay me $150, but the $850 would be released. Hakavas achanot, the sachar sachir ein nishamet, the account in a store and the payment due to a worker is not released in Shmita. Vimzakmu osam b'malvet nishamet, but if they have been converted to a loan, they are. What, according to most authorities, this means when the shopkeeper writes down each item that you take, and he's never totaled it up, then it's not released in Shmita. Once he's totaled it up, and this is the total amount that you owe, at that point, that's a debt and not your account that's opened with him, and that would be canceled in the Shmita year. V'ken hadin b'knasis, and so too with court-imposed fines. Megarish ishto kodem Shmita enksuvasad nishmetes. So too, if you someone would divorce their wife before the end of the Shmita year and they haven't paid her yet for ksuva, the ksuva is not released. Hamoser shtarosav lebeistin, the one that gives over his debts to the beistin. Vomer lehem, and he says, "Atem gavuli chov ze eno mishamet," and he says, "You, the beistin, collects it and then turns the money back to me. This would not be released during Shmita." There's a lot more to discuss. This is the prusbul that Hillel established. How did he do it? What did he do? How does it work? That will require a little bit more analysis. So, and so too, the rabbi said in Makos that if I extend someone a loan for 10 years, so it's not collectible at the end of the Shmita doesn't annul this debt. The Naamar Rachmana, and so too the story says, Lo yigosh b'chov haroy lingosh. It says, excuse me, it says you will not press the person for a loan. You can't collect on a loan. You can only say you can't collect on a debt that would otherwise be collectible. V'zelo higia zmano l'nagsho adayin. And this debt, the date of that it's due has not yet arrived, and therefore Shvis does not release one from such a debt. And then there's an interesting point. Umasha Amru, Shemitne al Chavero B'chovo, Almana Shelo Tishmatenu Shvis, Harizeh Mishamit. If he says, I'll loan you money on the condition that Shvis doesn't have the power to annul this debt, that doesn't work. The debt is still annulled by Shmita. Lefi shehu kimatne amashikasu b'Torah, because you're making a condition against the Torah. Aval amar lo, but if you say something differently, almanas shelo tishmatenu chov zeh afilu b'Shvis. If you say this debt will not be annulled by Shmita, you're talking about the debt, not the Shmita. The first one you're saying Shmita won't annul the debt. Here you're saying this debt, the two of us are making an agreement that Shmita won't affect it. Kolomar, afal pi shedin shvis lahashmit. He is saying to the person, even though the halacha is that Shmita releases one from one's obligations and debt. Ani matne imcha, I can make this debt conditional with you. Shelo tishmit chovze, that this particular debt will not be released. Ein shmis mashmetas be'inyan zeh, that Shmita doesn't release him from this particular debt. Shekol tanai sheb'mamon kayan, because a condition that both people accept concerning money is valid. The difference between this and the first part is I'm making a condition about the Torah. I can't say the Torah doesn't do this, because the Torah says it does happen. But even though that does happen under Torah law, we can make a personal condition about a specific thing, saying Shmita annuls debts, but the two of us are conditioning this debt that the Shmita doesn't affect it. So what happens if you have a debt that should have been released in Shmita? Over alzeh v'tava es chavero al chov שעברה עליו שnas shvis b'zman habayis bitalase. If someone didn't do anything to protect the debt, it was a debt that should have been annulled by Shemitah year, but he tries to collect it after the Shemitah year. If it was during the time of the temple, he has violated the Torah prohibition. Milvadshu over alav, more than you've negated a positive and a negative prohibition. Bizman hazeh ka avid isur d'Rabbanan, and in our times when the temple isn't standing and there is no Shmita of the land by Torah law, therefore there's no Shmita of monetary things from Torah law. Nonetheless, there's a rabbinic prohibition. Vim yadu habeistin sheshvis avra alav ein niskaking lingosh soklal. If Beistin knows that this loan was initiated before the Shmita, and now the Shmita is passed over it, they will not help to collect it. Even there are times when it's only rabbinic. Even though the release of debts in our time is rabbinic, the Kaimelan Sha'avda Deraisa, and it's a Torah source. Ifsika hilchsa de b'chol davar sheb'mamon yesh koach biad hachamim lidchos davar Torah. Nonetheless, the hachamim have the ability to release a monetary obligation. Mitam hefker, based in hefker, because the based in has the ability to declare something ownerless and to transfer title to someone if they see a necessity to it. And here, there is a necessity to the fact that we are going to create this rabbinic legislation of Shmita, Kesafim, of the release of debts, even in our year. There is one other aspect that's not brought up in the Sefer HaChinוך, that's brought up in the Mitzvah's Chinuch, and that is V'kamosha Shmita mishametes chov, kach mishametes shavua. Just like Shmita obviates the necessity to pay back a debt, so too it removes the obligation to take an oath. Meaning, if someone based upon the halacha would have to exempt himself from payment by taking an oath that he's not liable, because the debt wouldn't be collected anymore, wasn't collectible, therefore the oath doesn't exist either. She'im chayev eze shavua al chov, if he's liable to take an oath because of a debt, va'avra hashmita, and the shmita passes, pater mea shavua, he's exempted from the obligation to take the oath. De lo yigosh mikomakom bein mamon bein shavua, venim kafer alav va'avra alav shmita ve'adam b'kfiraso. That the Torah says that he's not allowed to press someone. It doesn't matter whether he's pressing him for money or he's pressing him to take the shavua. In either case, he wouldn't be allowed to do this. So therefore, the obligation to take a shavua also ends when the end of Shmita arrives and someone is exempted from this obligation. We will look at a few of these halachas in greater depth in the next few shiurim. Everyone should have a wonderful day.